Okay, brothers and sisters, wanted to come out here and make a quick video on a post that was made to a Facebook page yesterday. Kind of stumbled across it looking on a particular page that had some information about Israelites. And I saw this YouTube video that was posted up by a Dr. Brown. Now, I don't know much about Dr. Brown. However, this is following along with the same theme that we saw a few weeks ago with, I guess, kind of the influx of vocab Malone, and there was Dr. James White, who had a debate or a couple of discussions with Elder Rakov from GOCC. So we're gonna, I guess, as a community, we're gonna see a lot more of this. And what I'm kind of getting, or the undertone that I'm kind of getting is, all you Israelites need to be quiet. Just go back to where you came from. Just calm down. We're gonna have to go back to following what we say, because you guys are ridiculous, uneducated, and don't really know what you're talking about. and I, he didn't say that verbatim, but like I said, it's kind of hard not to feel that way when these videos are coming out, and they're just kind of vague blanket statements going over how an individual feels in terms of their philosophy, and not really having an honest discussion about what's happened here in terms of black history, iconoclasm, and just the attempted eradication of people and their history. And when I say black history, I'm also going to include so-called Native Americans and Hispanics, because we're all one and the same. So, his answer to the question of not surprising to me, but the answer was no. He was not black, but he was not white. He's now Middle Eastern. Okay, and again, back to the same theme that we've we're used to at this point, is that the color doesn't matter, or they're going to be anything but African American or black. Africans, so-called Africans, were savages. And no, Dr. White did not say this, but again, these are some of the things that are said frequently, and it's quite common to see comments like this in forums and comments on YouTube videos when this type of discussion comes up. So, the problem is, like I said, you've got to be willing to have an honest discussion about this particular topic, going into some of the real history of, I guess, what you would call black nobility in Europe during the Dark Ages. Okay, and this is what some of these pictures that are flashing up on your screen right now, this is what this is, just to give those who might not be familiar with this concept an idea that give them an idea of the type of rulership that was in place, that was not what we would call Caucasian or white. In fact, these are people of color that we're talking about, and they did rule. There was a period of time where they were reigning. Okay, so. I know it sounds hard to believe to many people who aren't going to delve into it. Now, on the flip side of that, there are many great historians that are what we would call a white person or Caucasian, who do go into this area or field of research and do an excellent job presenting a non-biased, objective point of view in terms of what happened and why it is that we see some of the images and some of these individuals are highlighted today in our school systems, in Hollywood, and all sorts of reading material. And, the bottom line is, as a nation, the so-called African Americans, Native Americans, and Hispanics do not have as much of a stronghold on media, Hollywood, schools, publishing, in all sorts of these different fields where we can manipulate or project things in a biased manner, like the so-called Zionist Jews, not so-called, but actual Zionist Jews have. They have a great stronghold on these things, and they control a great deal of what we see. So right now, the African American community has very limited resources, and really we're not in a position to control what's getting out there. When I see these images, I wonder why we didn't see it in school. But again, this is still a concept that's very difficult for people to come to terms with, especially as far as trying to figure out where this fits in Christianity. Okay. And that's something I can go on and explain, but, we're going to have to examine this. But first, we're going to go ahead and start out by looking at Dr. Brown's video that's coming up here in a couple of seconds. And
there's an increasing movement in the African American community today called the Black Hebrew or Black Hebrew Israelite movement that claims that the original Israelites, therefore the original Jews, were black, and that today's Jews are not really Jews. There are differences among their beliefs. Some say that the white man is the manifestation of Satan. Some say that Jesus is the Messiah. So you've got a wide range of beliefs, but they have this in common, that it is the black man who is the original Hebrew or Israelite. They'll point to verses like Song of Solomon, the first chapter, where the woman speaking there says, I am black but beautiful, using the Hebrew word shachor. Well, what's interesting there is that the next verse says, I've been darkened by the sun. In other words, my skin is dark because I've been darkened by the sun, not because I have black skin to start. What's also interesting is a verse like Lamentations 4 that says your leaders, your nobles were white. They were pure like milk, like snow. And it doesn't seem to be speaking about just their inside character being pure, because later in the verse it says that they're ruddy. It'd be like red-haired, reddish skin, ruddy. Again, that doesn't speak naturally of someone that would be an African. And let's also remember that when Moses married an Ethiopian woman, according to Numbers, the 12th chapter, there was controversy in the family over that. Ethiopians were black. Ethiopians, a Cushite in Hebrew, they were black. As for everything we know about Moses and his ancestors, they go back not to Africa, they go back to Mesopotamia. The Babylonians, the Assyrians, these are Middle Eastern people like the Iraqi people today. Their skin would be darker than mine as a Caucasian, but lighter than the skin of a black man. As Billy Graham once said as he was speaking to a black crowd, he said to them, Jesus was lighter than you and darker than me. Oh, there was certainly some black blood in Israelite history. No question about that. I don't dispute that. But were the Israelites as a whole black? Certainly not. They were Middle Eastern. And that's also clear from what we call the iconography. When you look at the places from whence Israel came in its earliest origins, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the patriarchs, when you look at inscriptions and things from their old homelands, you see that the peoples there are Middle Eastern people. And remember, the children of Israel were in Egypt, all right? But they were not Africans themselves. They were slaves in Egypt, and they came out of Egypt. And even in Egypt, most of the people are not black. You had the Nubians who were black. Most of the people would be darker Middle Eastern people. The last thing, though, is this. Black Hebrew Israelites will say, we are the original Jews. We are the true Jews because only the curses of Deuteronomy 28, they can only apply to us. The curses for disobedience to the Torah, they can only apply to us. Only we have suffered those things and gone in ships to be slaves. Actually, it's a kind of a strange teaching, isn't it? It's got to be us because no one's disobeyed more than us, and that's why we've been cursed. That's kind of a strange teaching. What's also strange is that I didn't hear of any black Hebrew Israelites in Nazi Germany saying, hey, we're the real Jews, kill us. It's odd. It's odd that when there's Jewish persecution around the world, the black Hebrew Israelites are not saying, hey, kill us, we're the real Jews. Interesting, isn't it? As for the end of Deuteronomy, going in ships to slaves, there are actually several times in ancient Israelite history when that could have easily been fulfilled regarding the Jewish people. So, the black Hebrew Israelites, the original Jews, the original Israelites, absolutely, categorically, no.
So Dr. Brown here used Strong's 7838, which is shahor. It's a descriptive word, an adjective that means black. And if you take a look here at Songs of Solomon 5:11, it says his head is as the most fine gold, his locks are bushy and black as a raven. You can see there they're comparing that color to the blackness of a raven. So it doesn't mean getting dark or getting brown or darkened by the sun. It means black. And if we use that Strong's number again, we can clearly see that that is used to describe multiple or in multiple passages. It's used to describe the color black. And here's just an example of that lexicon. Okay, so we have now Revelation 14, or excuse me, 1 verses 14 and 15, and it says his head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. Now notice here, it talks about the feet of Christ being as of fine brass, as if they had burned in a furnace. Now, taking the luster out of brass, it's essentially brown. So, if we're going to take that color and burn it, we're going to assume that it's going to be blackened. Okay. And that's logical thinking. It's not a stretch of the imagination by any means. And we find that Christ is described this way, not only in this chapter, but also in Daniel. So that alone, for somebody who is going to try to make the argument that Christ was white, that alone raises some questions. But when we couple these things with other circumstances, then we have even bigger problems in trying to make the claim that he was white or brown skin for that matter. And we're going to go into that here in a minute. Now, when we talk about Egypt, one of the things that comes to mind is that Egypt is well known for a lot of the artifacts and relics that are still here to this day. When I think about Egypt in particular, when it comes to the actual people and their physical attributes, one thing that pops up is that a lot of these statues are actually missing the nose. Now, if this happened to one or two of these statues, maybe it was an accident, but you quickly start to realize that this was a trend of defacing the nose. And one of the most famous relics that this happened to was the Sphinx. Now, it's well known in history that Napoleon was responsible for removing the nose from the Sphinx, and the reason that he did it, well, they're saying that he didn't like the fact that this was a dark race of people, and that he was able to convince or sell the story that the land was inhabited by a lighter skinned people. It's kind of silly to think that we couldn't see through these artifacts. Perhaps he got away with it for a time, but fortunately, people who are looking into this matter and trying to find truth in all this, are pleased to see that his scheme didn't work. Okay. When it comes to understanding what this movement's about, and I don't want to call it a movement. This is actual an awakening, and this is prophecy being fulfilled. And the Bible tells us, unless we be like little children, we're not going to enter the kingdom of heaven. We're going to have to relearn. This is going to be a different process if we're serious about salvation and serious about Christ, learning who he is, because we have to believe on him as it is, as he's described in the Bible, as he's mentioned in the Bible. And his physical attributes are included with that. Seeing how these people throughout history were cracking noses off of statues, and the fact that a lot of these pictures that have been playing up here, I didn't grow up seeing these in schools. I had to go find this stuff myself, as did many other so-called minority groups that are just now learning this type of history. So, just to jump on real quick, the people that are in the land of Israel today, which is nothing more than a propaganda state, these are actually Japhetic people. Okay, they're Ashkenaz, and if you go back to Genesis 10, verses 2, it tells you the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog, and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshech and Tyrus, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz and Rephath, and etc. So it lists out the sons of Japheth, and then if we go down to verse 5, it says, "By these were the isles of the Gentiles, divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nations." Okay? They're not Semites. And it tells you that in Genesis 10. And again, I don't mean to laugh out of disrespect, but it's bizarre, because, to be honest, I was fooled just with everybody else too, and try to put, I guess the best thing during these last days and these prophetic events unfolding, the best thing to try to do is to put yourself in the shoes of a people who nobody cared about. Okay, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of deaths in regards to the transatlantic slave trade. We're talking about massive slaughter of the Native American people that were in this land, the so-called Hispanics. When the conquistadors went basically to eradicate the Israelites, and to sit down and learn in school that this was about Columbus finding a new land is utterly ridiculous. And to find out the dark, nefarious history that nobody wanted to talk about, that is cost so many lives. And we're talking about the hundreds of millions just in the slave trade and the wars. There's probably millions and millions upon millions of deaths because of the oppression. Okay, even after slavery, the Jim Crow era, and to this day, we got our young African American, Hispanic, Native American men and women and children even on drugs, and alcohol, and this is because of generations of oppression, and that's all it comes down to. Is anybody asking for sympathy? No, nobody's asking for that sympathy, but it's quite funny that the people that are asking for sympathy are getting it, and nobody's quite looking to question the people that have the finances to tell the narrative and to spin the story any way they would like. and the ones that the forgotten ones, the hidden ones. Those are the real children of Israel, the ones that you see on street corners, selling drugs, homeless. Okay, it didn't say anything in the Bible about as a nation that the Jewish people would be prosperous, owning Hollywood, the media, just running everything in the last days. Okay, that was not prophesied. And it certainly wasn't prophesied that they would be the largest gay capital in the world. All right, they're not enforcing the law. They don't care about the law. They don't believe in the Bible. And I'm not going to say that about all so-called Jewish people. I'm not anti-Semitic. I consider myself Semitic. But, there's some great Jewish people out there that are practicing. They're messianic. But the leaders, the puppet masters that are over there in Israel right now, right? They are not the people. And they're almost rubbing it in our faces. And if we don't get our act together and figure this out, then we're going to perish alongside of them. So again, if we're really serious about salvation, I recommend cleaving to a real Israelite and learning why do we say that the laws were not done away with. Why, we have an issue with modern day Christianity, which is nothing more than paganism wrapped in Christ, a false Christ. So, we can thoroughly explain and back up every single thing that this movement stands for. But you have to seek it out. Otherwise, I'm going to get called every name in the book. We're going to get cussed out. We're going to be hated. And frankly, that's what happened to the prophets in the days of old. We weren't, the prophets in the old days weren't running mega churches. They were getting sawed in half in logs and stoned to death. So keep that in mind. Till next time, brothers and sisters, shalom.